seconded by Jason, to adopt the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? 6-0. Okay. First off, we have the needs assessment and strategic planning. I think the needs assessment is what we're gonna hit first, which is a new requirement that we're all so excited about.
Yeah. This is from my rant a few meetings ago. So House Bill 2567 requires that before the board adopt a budget, that they review state assessment scores and they review a district assessment to be able to say that the budget reflects our needs and our commitment to student success. Part of this bill says that the board needs to identify a time at which all students will score a minimum of 3 on state assessment scores. And state assessment goes 1 through 4. 3 is at grade level, 4 is above grade level. So what this nonsense is saying again, that we can take every child, no matter their circumstances, no matter what, and we will give them a date when every kid will be at grade level. So we, the admin team went through this assessment review for budget considerations. I don't know if you want to read all that or if you want to skim it while I go through it, but we were able to identify barriers, and this is the list of barriers for our particular district that have to be overcome for each student to achieve grade level proficiency. And then you have to identify budget actions that should be taken to address and remove those barriers. So as we have our budget hearing next week, I would say under letter B, the admin team identified these actions: increase salaries to recruit and retain. Well, we've done that, and we're doing that again next year with our salary negotiations already complete. So that's a budget action. Additional staff members hired. We have hired more paras this year for support in the classroom, and our budget will reflect that. Substitute teachers, well, we get what we can get, and we'll have that discussion a little further down the line. Para-educator support for SPED. We're short SPED staff for the first time since I've been here this year. We had 2 late resignations, and they haven't replaced. Last year, there were districts that were 10 to 20 SPED short from the co-op. So we don't have a lot of control over that, other than we can support and put the word out and help be an advocate for those positions. Pre-K programs, and then trauma and mental health issues. So I think everything that we've done that I know of, and since I've been here, we are moving in these directions, and we are chipping away at these barriers for district-wide. Now, when it comes to the amount of time that every student will reach proficiency, this verbiage in a very polite way says, no, we're not going to commit to that. That's like having a date when all of us will be able to fly to the moon and be astronauts. It's insanity. So we're actually taking a stand, if you support this. We're doing what a lot of districts are doing and saying, you can't put a date on that. It is impossible. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what about all the issues that we have no control over
Oh, absolutely.
in these first ones?
Yep. Again, this is, in reality, this is a new hoop to jump through. We have the discussion. I think we've constantly discussed what our specific needs are to our district and how we address them and how we move forward. But this is jumping through a hoop and putting some things on paper. There is the KPI, Kansas Policy Institute. This has to be posted on our website after tonight. If there's agreement on it, we have to post a lot of stuff on our website, and KPI is going to be hunting districts and checking to see if they're in compliance with the law. So, that being said, then we had to do each individual building, which here, because we're a mile apart, it's almost identical. If we were in a district that had 15 elementary schools, well, yeah, you might have socioeconomic disparity between one building and another, and those needs would be different. But basically, our assessment of LES and junior, senior high, it is almost identical because they're the same. So I didn't know if you had any questions on that, if you need some time to flip through it. The next thing, and I'm not rushing you, but I'm just gonna say, the next thing we're gonna look at is actual state assessment scores. So whenever you feel like you're ready and have questions or anything like that.
Like I said, each student is different, each student can learn differently. There's no way that we as a board or as a school can do any one thing to make every student the same. I mean, there's no way,
We'll have, most of us,
you know.
with the exception of you, have more than one child, and that'd be like taking all of our kids and saying each of our kids is gonna be the exact same. That they're all gonna learn, and we all know that each kid is different, and they have their own.
And did they learn in the last 30 years that each kid lives, or learns differently?
Differently,
And here we are trying to cram it all back down to,
Yeah, which is the hypocrisy of
Yeah.
this. It's individualize your instructional plan, and an IPS, an individual plan of study for every single kid, but make sure they all come to the exact same place. You know, it's no child left behind kind of a concept. It's, you know, what and I'll say this, obviously, so it won't ruin the recording, but I will tell you, I've asked superintendents why statewide superintendents just don't go, no. No, we're not doing it.
Yeah, what response did you get?
Education's full of a lot of hazards. You could lose funding, you know, things like that, and I'm just kind of like too old for that, I guess.
Yeah, and some kids work with their hands, some kids
I know.
take a test, it's so
And that was
frustrating.
And that was something that was said, there are so many kids that score at level 1 and 2 academically that get skill sets in a technical or vocational trade that are massively successful people. So rubber stamping or building this corral that says only this makes you successful, again, it's just insane.
It'd be interesting to look at the graduates from the previous several years and the ones that, of course, it's hard to quantify success, but, you know, the ones that are really successful, were they top students? Maybe, maybe not. You know, and some of the top students, are they super successful? It doesn't correlate.
You know, and I think our goal, at least I know the administrative goal is, we produce successful graduates who are employable and can make a living and pay taxes and be productive citizens in our community. Well, that can range from A to Z, because somebody might be happy with $20,000 a year and they can live and they're content, but it's just a box that drives me nuts.
And that collectively, people, like you said, haven't all got together and said, this is nuts. Yes. Because you have to know that there are more than just our boards sitting around saying, kids aren't all the same.
Maybe not on their recording.
Yeah.
So any questions on that? And, you know, again, this is just something that we have to do prior to our budget meeting, to say that it was reviewed, that we understand where we are, that we understand where we want to be, and that we're spending money appropriately to get there.
And some of this is probably good information to know, because it makes us take a step back and look at where we are and what we are, but putting the ultimatum at the end of it is,
Yeah.
Well, I think effectively we know where we're at and where we want it to be,
yes.
but, you know, we don't have the same resources to get there that larger districts have, so.
Yeah, I would
But
like
maybe
to-
this will help other people in the community understand that as well. We acknowledge that this is where we're at, and we're doing what we can.
Yes, with the barriers we have, and
I've been very passionate with state representatives and the Commissioner of Education, everybody else, about the inequity of education, because my kids graduated all from Johnson County schools. Our kids don't have the same opportunities, and I pointed that out. They want us to produce the same product. We don't have the same resources. So I've told them since I started as a superintendent, there is no equity in education. The funding is not equitable enough to make our kids have every opportunity of every other student in this state.
Be like saying, all you farmers, approve your cow herds in 2 years to be at this level. It just can't be done.
Exactly. Questions or assessment scores? This is quite a beefy spreadsheet that was developed by Greenbush. And what we did was go back to 2016-17 school year, and we entered data, all of our assessment scores for every grade level in math and English. And then they put together this big spreadsheet that mapped it all out so that it was actually understandable. So if you start at this very first one, these are our top students scoring at level 3 and 4. And if you look at the color coding, the very upper corner, 2016-17 third grade, that's gonna be the class of 2026 over on the class of code. So as you stair step down, they're in red in 2016-17, then in fourth grade, they're in red in 2017-18, you follow me? So you can track an actual class as it goes through these assessment scores. Probably something that's more relevant is if you go to the third page, it compares to the state average for 21-22. So if you see the word false in those squares, that means we perform worse than the state average for that particular area. So grade 10 right there, ELA, grade 10 scored better than the state average, but grade 3 did not. One thing that's interesting to me, back to the front page of our highest scorers, so let's just take third grade because it's the first score, it's easy to follow. So in ELA assessments in 16-17, 26% of our kids scored in the top 2 tiers. Either proficient at grade level or exceeding grade level. The next year, as fourth graders, that number is 48% of the class. As fifth graders, it dropped to 18.75% of the class. Then no testing in 1920 because of pandemic. Then as seventh graders, they tested at 26%, but then as eighth graders, it dumped to 10.34% at level 3 and 4. So because level 1 and 2 are below, you just take that number, that means 80% of our kids were below grade level in 8th grade ELA last year. Now, people at the state level and others would say, well, if that isn't that direct reflection of learning loss because of the pandemic, you know, we weren't affected by it that greatly. So some of these numbers are very concerning to me. In math, let's just start with that 2016-17 third grade because it's easy to track, and then you can follow all kinds of numbers that you want. But we went at our top 2 levels, proficient and exceeds 36%, as fourth graders 37%, as fifth graders their math proficiency dropped to 12% of students scoring at or above grade level. Now, I wasn't here, I don't know if Mrs. Flynn would have any reflection on that as to why that was historically. Then you skip a year and they're at 17 and then they're at 13.
How do you think that compares to other schools?
To what?
To other schools?
I don't know. The only thing I can do is compare it statewide.
Yeah.
You know, without looking at every single year of their data and importing it into this spreadsheet. So I find that concerning because it seems to be a drop. And if you go to fourth grade math, 47 as fifth graders, 22% as sixth graders, 20. And then as eighth graders, 12 are scoring at level 3 and 4. So what I think our budget, that we can say that we're doing that's reflective of this, addressing what I find to be a concerning drop in assessment scores is, and it wasn't all our budget, but we have new curriculum. Last year was the first year that we had it. So we have some norming to do with new curriculum. We have brought in tens of thousands of dollars worth of remediation programs and resources. So from my chair, my expectation would be that this turns a corner. You know, the elementary for years, I guess, before I got here, it was build your own curriculum and you just looked at standards and then you bought what you thought would teach those standards. Well, now we have standards-based curriculum in all our core content. So the expectation is we are teaching without a doubt what is expected to be known for the state standards. I've always said, if you look at a textbook, any school textbook, there's about 50 names and they all have a whole bunch of letters behind their names. And I've always said, we are not curriculum experts. No teacher is. You can go get a master's in curriculum and instruction and maybe you can call yourself an expert then. But for me to teach biology and think I can build a curriculum when these people as a team with all of the credentials have done it to align to state standards, in my mind, you're foolish not to use the resource. So now we have those resources. I'll be honest, if we do not see a change in trends, then we have to dig a little bit deeper. And then we ask questions like, is there fidelity to that curriculum that we purchased? Is that what we're using as our resource? If that's so, do we have an instruction gap where the teacher themselves is not effectively communicating that curriculum, and what professional development or support does that teacher need to be able to impart that knowledge? You know, but much like everybody gets to grade level, we're dealing with, we're not making nuts and bolts. We're dealing with free will. There's a TikTok that I wish you could see, and did you show it at the back to school? The math teacher that's like, okay, so you're gonna be teaching math to kids who don't wanna learn it. Was that part of when the board was there? And they're like, well, I can't remember how it goes, but it's just, so wait a minute, I'm teaching and they don't wanna learn it. Yes, how am I gonna get them to learn it? Well, you're going to make them. And it just had the interesting dialogue of, they have free will, you know? You can't force a kid to learn a thing. But I think here we talk a lot about relevance and relationship, and with relationship comes a commitment to being, I don't want to say worthy of the relation, but you know what I mean. I didn't want to disappoint my football coach, so I worked very hard. And because there was a relationship. And so kids will work harder if they know teachers love them and care about them. There will be that, I don't want to let you down. And that's what we focus on a lot.
Not to derail you, but to look at the third grade from 2018-19, third grade from 2021, I don't know if we're doing a better job getting their building blocks better, but if you look at those numbers, the class of 2028 on down, their percentages are almost double everyone else, even across there. The purple's hard to read, but I think it's 76 is fourth graders, 56 or 66 is sixth graders, and then 53. But even in math, 60 percentile, I don't know whether we maybe missed something with some of these kids younger, and once again, we all know the makeup of different classes is different, and so but I do like the way that shows further down the line.
It's a very interesting graphic, and like I said, a very quick snapshot is simply this page here that tells you if we're better than the state or we're not as good as the state. And it's a quick glance.
2026 would be this year's 8th graders, I believe.
One thing that I'd add to that is, if you look at even when we started all-day kindergarten, those numbers will be very interesting as that class goes through. and reflecting back on that class, or the classes after them and the classes before, and comparing data. And then also what you said is, we have, a couple classes right now, one in the junior high, one in high school, that is just, it's a rough group. And they struggle, and we can give them so many resources, and it's just a different group of kids.
Another,
And not to make excuses, but
Yes.
that it does impact the test scores. Their scores shouldn't go down, obviously, but they just, it's tough.
another thing that the board did that's reflected in our budget is we have a pre-K3 now. And it is an educational preschool, so our kindergarten readiness, in a few years, we should see a reflection of a much higher percentage of kindergarten readiness kids, and from that point, then you grow. But, you know, again, widgets, parents, you know, everything. Some kids get read to every night, some kids do not. Some kids are reading and doing things that others aren't, and if we're not all on the same plane, then the kindergarten teacher is going, oh, I gotta bring this one up to here, but this one's already here, and there's just a lot of disparity in kindergarten readiness, and it's a critical time to have those basic skills to grow on. So we are doing those things with our budget, I just want you to know. I don't think we have anything that we can't say. Our budget's reflective of our district's assessments and needs.
The classes that are, the junior high and high school classes that are struggling, what is there that we can do? Is there anything that we can do to help those kids to somehow be able to meet some of the standards or to improve in some way?
This last year, they started MTSS with our sixth graders last year, which was extremely impactful. We had kids that, if you guys remember, Miranda and Katie came and presented, kids that were not reading at grade level, and they got everyone, I think it was like 80% up to grade level reading. This year, we implemented MTSS in the high school, and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in the junior high, where they have it every single day. And we have enough teachers that are, one of our biggest struggles is our staffing. Having, you put, 6th grade, you have 25 kids, and you really need to have maybe 5 different groups of kids, because they're not all the same, so you tier them out by their level. Well, we don't have the staffing to do that. So we got as creative as we could. Our 6th grader is divided into 2 groups, so we have 2 staff and then some support staff, 2 teachers. And then we have 7th and 8th grade, we have all junior high teachers on board that 1 hour that do MTSS, so they're able to tier those kids out best we can. It's still not enough, but it's better than what we were doing. And our high school does MTSS on Wednesdays. We have them tiered out, they divide up into groups, we try to get the math kids. So one of the big things too that we need to understand is not only getting these kids up to here, but these kids up here are bored and we're not pushing them. And to me, that is such a disservice we're doing to our kids. So I'm hoping that what we've implemented this year, we'll see how successful it is. One of the things that we talked about as a staff is what we were doing before is nothing. So that what we're doing might not be the answer, but it's better than what we were doing, and we can continue to improve that. Also, I wish that we could compare state assessments to like maybe our Fast Bridge. There's no way, because it's apples and oranges. But I think I told you guys when we talked about giving an incentive for state assessments, state assessments is not, I don't want to say they don't care, but kids don't care about it. So how accurate is that information? That data is not completely 100% accurate.
Yeah, the 3rd through 6th or the 3rd through 5th, those kids still, like you said, but once they get into junior high or realize that it's whatever, then
Right.
then these start falling
And
off.
you hate to be that way, because I don't know that every kid is that. There are kids that still find fidelity in it, and they'll take it.
That's why I like to compare it to other schools, because we might be beating our head up against the wall. And everybody's doing the best we can, but it's just a common direction.
And that, at one point, the state was talking about doing the ACT, because kids find value in it, because you have to use it to get into college, and, I don't know, they haven't really pushed that any further yet, but to me, that would at least have some substance to it, where kids will, maybe buy into that score a little more than what the state assessments show. But you're still gonna have kids that don't need the ACT. So then what about them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish there was a tool that you could truly
Well, unless
use.
they made the ACT statewide and free, every school district's average ATC
Went down.
ACT score don't. Because it used to be the college-bound kids worked very hard to get a very good score,
Mhm.
and the other kids would take a work keys vocational assessment or nothing at all. But now, I wish I could remember
Do you
Randy
remember,
Watson's,
do you remember his thing?
he talked about KU basketball.
Yeah, do you remember it was, so he's talking about the national championship game, and he had the roster up, and he said, he showed the playing minutes, and he said, do you know why these 6 guys played the whole time? Well, because they were the best. And then they compared that to the ACT score, and he said, you know, these kids are gonna have better scores than these kids, and there's a reason that KU didn't play these other kids, they're not as good, so they're not gonna have, so then when we test statewide, of course our scores are gonna go down. Now we're testing everybody, everybody's playing, before it was just these number of kids were playing the ACT, now we're testing all of them. And he did a comparison with the KU basketball championship game, which was very, very neat.
Nikki loved it.
I did,
She
I
was
actually took
inspired.
pictures, I
She may
It was a
enroll in
great
master's
analogy.
program at KU.
Well, I mean, he could have used a different team, but it was a great analogy.
But David, back to beating our head against the wall, I honestly don't think we are. I think, and I don't want anybody to think this is a discouragement, this is just data. It's just data, and with the things that this building has done to support kids with MTSS, the things that we are doing at the grade school, you know, this is a kind of the first time that there's been a line drawn in the sand, and now it's, let's see what's happening, you know, but I'm telling you, the fact that this building, we put down here that we don't have enough staff, we don't have money for more staff. If we had more staff, we'd have more support in the outside the classroom, in an MTSS program. But when you've got, you know, 20 people and 15 of them are coaching, and 18 of them have 4 or 5 or 6 preps every day, these people are stretched thin, and they're still doing it. And I think that is, to me, it's amazing, astonishing, pat on the back. These people don't quit. Our staff is rock stars, and they don't quit. So applause to them. And this is by no means a reflection other than it's simply data. And all of us know you can truly make data say whatever you want it to say.
Well, and Mr. Crenshaw, I think you need to add too, is that MTSS at the elementary school has been ELA, and this year we figured out into the schedule how to put math into it for every grade. So they have MTSS every day for ELA and math, which is good.
So, any more questions on that?